Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Estate with Ryan. So excited to be with you on a Saturday. Hope you're having an amazing weekend. It's great to be a Vol. Home game in Neyland, 4:15, big game today. Hope to see you guys down there. But thank you for tuning in for Real Estate with Ryan. Got a busy week. A lot of real estate going on. Got a great show for you. So much going on. Hard to believe October's in full steam. We talked about last week how this coming week or next week will be October 12th through the 18th. Could be the best time to sell a house. All the kiddos were on spring break or fall break, I would call it. And so it's kind of been a slower week, but we've been busy. A lot of things moving. Interest rates, Feds are in a couple of weeks going to be taking a few moments to look at the interest rates. We're expecting a quarter of a point, but who really knows? But that's where we're looking at. A little sluggish in the housing market. Might be because of fall, might be because of kids on break, but interest rates affordability is the key. Looking at Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, interest rates about 6.3%. That's a 30-year fixed loan. And then we've got a 15-year loan, 5.53, which is pretty competitive at 15 years. As always, we've got some congrats, got some new listings, some things that we've got working on, and I want to give some congrats and new listings as we go. All right, new listing, 2839 New Blockhouse Road in Maryville. Great property with some acreage. Actually has a horse barn and a horse. They're relocating to Texas, so make sure you check that property. That's going live this weekend. 104 Bufflehead Drive in Von Orr, Rarity Bay lot. Make sure you check that property out. West Vinegar Valley Road in Friendsville. That's got some acreage. Possibility if you have horses. Has an old barn on it. Check that one out. Congrats, our great client on Pine Haven Drive, 2876. Newer construction cabin. Over excess of $1 million under contract. Super excited for the second time. Well, it's 2025. We've had to do that a couple times this year. Sell them a couple times over. But glad to get that back under contract for our great sellers. And Miss Stone, congrats on 307 Timber Creek Road out in Maynardville. Special client. Enjoyed working with her. And thanks for your kind words the other day. So those are our congrats. New listings pending. We'll talk about games coming up and everything going on, but we'll kind of get into our show as always. And if you're tuning in for the first time, you can always catch Real Estate with Ryan. News Talk 98.7, 1 o'clock. Always there on the radio. Talk Radio. Great partners out there at 92.3 FM at 11 a.m. Also streaming live on their Facebook channel. Make sure you check us out there. And, of course, Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. You can always, in case you miss Real Estate with Ryan and want to be up to date with all the real estate news, we appreciate you listening and watching. You can catch us, on all those channels and platforms as well. Busy week for us. Commercial just rolled out. If you haven't had a chance to see it, Miles and Carlin, we all did a spot here over at the Sherry Parker Lee Stadium, and that was exciting. Great event, teamwork, a lot of work. We're going to post those behind-the-scenes photos of just what it takes to put those videos, from scripts to teaming and planning and design and fun and kind of bloopers behind the scenes. But it was a lot of work. Hope you liked it. Check it out. Let us know what you think. I thought it was a great spot and kind of times in with this market. If you're selling your home, you want it sold fast, and we can definitely do that for you. All right, let's talk about today's topic. I hope that you never have to go through this topic, but it's something that we're facing and we've faced for years. I don't think I've ever talked about it, probably because I didn't want to talk about it. But it's a topic that a lot of people go through. And it's, how to handle your home sale if you're going through a divorce. Always touchy situation. Several people this week, I think, one last week and a couple the previous week, just sold a great client's house. They were going through this unfortunate split up. And then met a client last week in Knoxville, kind of shared some of his story, talked to him, and it felt like it was important that we kind of cover this topic. So how to handle the sale of your home if you're going through a divorce is what we're talking about. So we'll talk about that. And then in the second part, we'll ask some questions, things that you may want to know, people that have asked that may be relative to this topic and help you if you happen to come across this in the future. So how do you sell your home in a divorce? What do you go through first and foremost? Hope you never have to go through that. But if you do, here's what you need to know to cover that. First, you're going to have to decide, obviously, between you and your partner or your ex, who's going to stay in the house, or, is it going to be empty, those kind of things. But the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get with their lawyer. You'll probably have separate lawyers. So make sure you have that kind of agreement before you hire an agent, okay? Because you're going to get with your lawyers. They're going to battle it out, charge you a bunch of money, and, make sure you're not entering into contracts where you don't have agreements and not on the same page. So first, get with your lawyers or having a mutual agreement to sell the property. That's the easiest thing. If there's a mutual agreement to sell the property, that's where you want to go. Next, you're going to hire an agent. Hire an agent to get that property done. Now, obviously, the more amicable the situation, the better. And there's a lot of emotions going on through this process. Ending of a marriage also can hit with a lot of different emotions through that process. You're selling one of the largest assets, in your life, a lot of memories, and then you're going through one of the most stressful things of a divorce while doing that. It can be very, very stressful. So partner with an agent that understands, maybe not your best friend, not somebody that you know at work or somebody that you know somebody, but somebody that can deal with you fairly, somebody that can deal with you and your ex in a position of professionalism and that can deal with the overwhelming steps and things that are going to come through this process. Hire an agent that's objective and has an experience of dealing with divorce properties. Unfortunately, we have a lot of experience dealing with that. That's just society now. I was watching something on the news the other day, and it talks about the millennial generation and the spike in divorce and breakup. It's just one of those things that are out there now. Wish it's not. But you need somebody that's come through that. And I think one of the biggest things that when you're choosing an agent moving forward, you need somebody that can, it's very challenging because you're going to pick one agent. One side, one spouse may want, one particular party. I went to Susie and we went to high school together, and then the other party may say, hey, well, I want, Johnny because, we work together. So sometimes it's best to find somebody that is not in that party, but kind of split down the middle, that's professional, that can kind of guide both sides, treat both sides fairly, what we need to do, and focus on the goal at hand. And the goal at hand at that point, unfortunately, is get the assets sold. We'll talk about splitting money, how all that works, what the courts do, what the state of Tennessee has in equitable distribution. Is it 50-50? Is there other things going on? We'll talk about that more. Probably we'll share in the second half of the show. But all that being said, sometimes to get it done sooner than later. We talked about, be patient. Be patient in divorce. It's not always easy. There's some things that you're going to need to be knowing that are important. So we talk about hiring an agent. The next thing before going to that agent is also having your divorce degree. You say, Ryan, what's a divorce degree? Degree is basically paperwork from your lawyer, judge, or the court that says, hey, these things have to be done, A, B, and C. Who has power to sell it, right? And does it take both parties? Are there repairs? These are important things. Is there a limit to repairs? How about payments that are going on? So we're covering all those different things while the property is for sale. Getting the house ready for sale is next. No matter, whatever the reason you're selling, presentation's everything. Having the right presentation. We talk about curb appeal and then walking through. Get a great agent like ourselves or a team member out there. I've got a lot of colleagues out there in the marketplace that do an amazing job as well. But get a professional out there that can help you walk you through the process. And we need to look at it. When we walk through a property, we look in the eyes of the buyer. We walk through, we see things, everything's got clutter, and we know that happens. But we look in the eyes of a buyer and see things that are in a different perspective. So it's important that we look in that perspective when walking through, making sure that when we're selling our property, we can maximize our return, that we put it on the market quickly and hopefully sells quickly. We know that the longer that a property sits on the market, you're less likely to get full price or get the price that you're looking for. Now, this is an important step in today's market. We're all over the board. We talk about affordability. But the next step that you're going to want to do is when you have the house ready, You have the marketing there. You pick the agent. You're ready to put it on the market. It comes price. It comes down to numbers. In today's market, a home is worth what? A buyer and what a seller will sell, will pay. That's really the market. What the demand. What is the market today? Now, the challenge in today, no matter the type of sale, is what is a buyer willing to pay in today's markets? Just watching the news. We got the stock market off of news with President Trump's comments. So we got all kinds of things going on. Look, we got a break coming up in just a few seconds. Stay with us with the second half.
When speed matters, every second counts.
Wow, that was fast.
In real estate, speed is an advantage.
In football, speed is crucial.
In softball, speed is game-changing.
If you want your home sold fast,
trust Ryan Coleman and his team at Hometown Realty for fast results.
Thanks, guys. Go Big Orange.
Hometown Realty is East Tennessee's #1 real estate group and a proud sponsor of the Vols.
I'm Ryan Coleman with Hometown Realty. The real estate market's changing every day. You need to know your home's value in today's market. Text your home address to 290-2290 for an instant, no-obligation home evaluation. That's 865-290-2290. And remember, when you're ready to sell, we have a guaranteed sale program to get you in your next home stress-free. Trust your hometown experts. We've helped thousands of people just like you. All right, we're back at it, second half real estate with Ryan. Sorry, I was coming in quick there, but a lot of stuff to cover. And like I said, tough topic. We're talking about divorce. If you're selling your home, what to do in a divorce. I hope you never go through it. But if you do, if you have to go through it, I have some clients say, hey, Ryan, don't be upset. I'm glad. I'm ready to move on. It's the best thing for me. And so for that aspect, we want to help you however we can do that. So we're talking about that. Before we get too far in the show, a lot to cover. We're going to talk about our vol update. All right, drum roll, please. 60-second vol update as we go. Boom, you know it today. 4:15 later on after the show, Arkansas in the house, Neyland Stadium, big game, SEC, big game. And it's a home game. And so we're hoping the Vols have an amazing game. Away game following next week. You know what time it is. We're going down to Alabama, Crimson Tide, October the 18th at 7:30. Big game. Big game. And so that's what we got coming up. Men's basketball back in full swing. Let's see. Ladies softball's just had a little preseason tournament. And then if you had a chance to see our commercial with Miles Kitzelman, Carlin Pickens, we did a great commercial out this week. Check it out. Had fun there. And thank you guys for going to the game and subscribing to our social channels. We had great 2 winners that we're presenting. Not only autographed swag, footballs, softballs, etc., parking passes are included. So make sure you give us some pictures and share the love on social media. We really enjoy sending you to the game. And that is our Vols 60-second update. Hometown Realty, proud sponsor of the Vols. Go Big Orange. Ooh, so let's see. Getting back into this topic. Where we're at. We're talking about President Trump. We're talking about the stock market, how we were transferring in that, and how the news on something that, comments there, how the market could change. And you got to watch it. So today's market is not yesterday's market. Any little thing that goes on in the markets, we're up, something could change it, And in a market that is obviously not in the best shape, right? It's not in the best shape, right? Affordability is insane. Lack of supply of homes. We're encouraging that new construction to start building more. And so there's some challenging points in the market. But on the same aspect, interest rates have lowered a little bit. We see an opportunity that here in a couple of weeks, it could get more affordability. I really said the last couple of weeks, buyers, it's your best time. That if you're thinking about buying, it really is an opportunity that you've seen, that you haven't seen in some time. Conversation with a great client the other day is, where do we project 2026? Well, we're seeing a little bit of the interest rates, and the biggest fear on a lot of buyers out in today's market is what? That, hey, these rates lower, and if we don't do something soon, prices may start increasing. It's just a matter of when. And so opportunity now, well, that opportunity may not last forever. And it's hard. And it's probably one of the biggest things that we all want to look at, and I'm in the business as well. We want to time the market. Well, it's really hard to time the market. And that's why I say that the most important thing to do is, obviously you don't want to sell when it's a bad market, but when you have to sell or when you need to sell or preparing, kind of getting out in front of that. I think now is moving all the way through fall in the first quarter of the year is a great opportunity not only to list your property, to get it to sell where there's less competition, but buying is an opportunity, where it's qualified sellers, qualified buyers with a great opportunity to seize the moment there. Talking about pricing to sell your home, we talk about that because today's market is today's market. So pricing the home today in any market is important. If you don't price it right, we limit people coming through. You have an opportunity to get an appraisal on the front end. An appraisal and a pre-appraisal, especially if you're going through a divorce, can be helpful. That way we're not working on one opinion or not. We can't have an appraisal that will give you a range of a value. Keep in mind, an appraisal is an appraisal. And we all the time get calls from appraisers. What's our value? What about this sale? And it's not that you can't give values from comparables. You surely can. And I really say in today's market, the best way to see what a home is worth is what buyers are paying today. And it's not the sales that were 6 or 12 months ago, right? Because 6 or 12 months ago in today's market that's moving so quickly is not there. So today's market is what buyers paying. What's pending right now? What did they close for? How long is it sitting on the market? That's going to give you your best indication. So appraisals are a snapshot in time, but are not always a final value. And we'll keep that in mind. List your home, market your home, show your home. Those are your next steps that you're going to put the home on the market. And getting that under contract is important. Once you get the home under contract, it's so important to understand who can make the decisions. Is it a joint decision to go under contract? Who's going to make the decisions on the inspection? There's a contingency period. So once you go under contract, there's that contingency period, usually about a week or 2 weeks after the contract, where the buyer does their inspections. They do all the termites and roof and HVAC and fireplace, you name it. They do all their inspections. And so when you get that inspection or the request from the buyer, there's a very, very short time frame, 3 to 5 days to come to a resolution. Now, let me tell you, with a divorce situation, nothing is quick. You have some parties that are not speaking to each other, some focus by text. I get one party that says this, and then it can get real nasty. And so you get the home under contract, you work together, you've gotten this far. How are we going to handle the repairs? Who's going to make the decisions? It's crucial. And again, you're going through an emotional roller coaster and understanding that that is the next step if you want closure and you're wanting to move forward. Now, inspection process is challenging because at this point, a lot of emotions are going on. This really means that the house is selling, and for some, there's a lot of memories. It's emotional, and it's sometimes deals do not go through because of the reality of that the sale is about to become final. So keep that in mind. Consider offers from buyers based on your priority. Sometimes you may be willing to sell a property where you're not willing to do any more work to it. We have options here. You can sell it as is. We can sell it to investors. You can sell it just not doing anything. We can advertise it as such where you don't have to worry about that. Keep that in mind. Complete the closing from there. If we get that far, this is probably the most important step that comes up to really understanding what type of state that you're in. How are you going to split the proceeds? Have that out ahead of time. We talk about that, and we talk on the front end. Usually it's somewhat amicable, but sometimes it's not. And so it's important that on the front end that the money's not held in escrow or sent to the two lawyers that could sit there for years to have this worked out before you go to closing. The settlement agent will want to know how the funds are split, and that will need to be in writing, okay? In your state, is it a community property where everything's split 50-50, or is it equitable distribution where the court divides the property in a fair manner? And there's a lot of factors that come into that. Non-state allow community property: Arizona, California, Idaho, Louisiana, Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, Washington, and Wisconsin. If you live in those states, you will split the proceeds equally if you reach an impasse. Otherwise, the proceeds will go into an equitable distribution. Okay? Think about that. Is there any prenups things like that. All that kind of comes into play. How about capital gains? These are things to think about. If you aren't aware of preserving capital gains in a divorce, married couples that jointly own their home can exclude up to $500,000 on the sale of that property. Obviously, the ownership test, one of the biggest things is you have to live there as a primary residence for 2 years, okay? Things to think about. Get with your CPA on that. I'm not going to get into tax advice and all that different stuff, but those are things to kind of come in. So things that you'll need to be thinking about, some questions that we have. Are you in agreement to sell the house together? Can you afford to keep the house? Or who's going to make payments while the property is on the market? These are things to think about. What does our divorce decree agreement say about the home? Is there a certain limit to repairs? Is there a time frame that has to be sold? All those things. Be upfront with your agent. Make sure you disclose that up front and work together. This is going to make it less stressful. Again, it's already one of the most stressful things you're going to deal with, but make sure we cover that. Are you in a community property or equitable distribution? Okay. Is somebody going to stay in the home until it sells? Big thing. It's important if you can have some person stay in the home. Obviously, it shows better. There's furniture, but it just depends. Get with us. We'll give you the best opinion the way it shows now. And maybe it is to leave it vacant. We can think about that. How will you choose a real estate agent on the listing terms? So important. We talk about not a friend, not a family member, focusing on somebody that is impartial, that can walk you through this, that has a team that can treat both parties, spouse and ex, and take care of their needs, working with their legal team to make sure it's done. How will we divide the proceeds is important. Handle that on the front end so nobody's surprised. And then talk about repairs, how we'll handle that. Hope you've enjoyed this topic. I hope you never, ever have to use it. But if you're going through this, just know we're always here for your help. And if you need us, hope you guys have an amazing weekend. Look forward to seeing you back next weekend with Real Estate with Ryan. Have a great weekend.